and for everyone to play their part in trying to just conserve the environment as well. Kenya is striving to achieve 10% forest cover. Kenya was actually really green in years gone, and due to deforestation and all manner of destruction that we've done to the environment, we have since lost a bit of that. We've been talking about the Mau forest as well, and among other initiatives to just try to conserve and retain our environment for future generations. We want to be here in the next years as well, and we need to make sure that we leave behind an environment that then serves the people that we leave it behind for, and everyone has to make an effort towards that. And people have been planting trees really all across the country since that initiative was brought about by President Uhuru Kenyatta and led by his deputy William Ruto as well, just to make sure that everyone plays a part in planting of trees and conserving the environment. Joining us in studio as well is Mr. Isaac Kalua, a renowned conservationist in Kenya as well. We were talking about air pollution as a problem, really, and I know how much you've done in terms of just trying to make sure that we plant more trees, especially in the Mau forest, and we are still cutting them, and our emissions are going high. Do you think about it? If you think about it, then the problem is really still big.
It's true, and I think we need also to think about it even in a more global way. What efforts have we been doing? What policies do we have at the end of the day that we need to be working on? Trees, as my colleague has said earlier on, they contribute to the reduction of such emission, and therefore we must be able to grow more trees to ensure that the situation changes in the country. But you look at the policies and the challenges that currently are ongoing. When you look at what Peter, and thank you Peter is doing a tremendous job. I joined him when he had not sold one single banner, and today he has sold 600,000 of them. And I saw the excitement because of all this. And it is, and I like the way he says that this is just partially what is supposed to be done. Look at my brother here with the technology that is available. Why I'm quoting this is because we need to look at it globally. A scientist in the very recent past did a research which brought out a fact that is alarming. Alarming because the air quality in a specific period is equivalent to how our brains are working and how our performance is, not to mention about sicknesses. Looking first of all globally, that we are losing 800 people every day. We are talking of losing 13 people per hour. So you can imagine how terrible this can be. We are talking 800 people per hour, and therefore per minute we are losing 13 people.
That's right.
You can imagine how terrible that is. The recent research that I'm talking about, and featured on BBC recently, is that a team of experts wanted to understand the performance of the brain and the health brain performance generally. And it was related to air pollution. So when you see people dying, people committing suicide, murders in cities, it is related to pollution. Scientifically proven. Okay. And therefore it has to be very, very alarming for us. When you go to what Peter is doing, magnificent GCOS. But are we informing the ladies at the grassroots? How many people are able to use this kind of GCO on the grassroots? And what are the interventions that we can do while Peter is doing the tremendous job that he is doing today? I have been in those rural areas, and you find the biggest problem is not immediately even the GCO, which we must use, but just because they don't have an outlet of the air. You just need to create a room. I enjoy going to the rural areas, and the first place that I want to go if I visit your grandmother's place, I want to go to where she cooks her food from. And you find most of the places, they don't have a right window that will allow that to come out. You cannot just talk about the 800 lives or the 13 lives that are lost every minute, but we need to imagine the effect of the people who are living today. Cancer, the asthmatic issues that we have talked about every single day. Tremendous information. Is it reaching the community? Are there people who are supposed to be doing that? NEMA is there. Do they have the funds to be able to roll out some of these issues? Do we have the support from the judicial arm of our system so that people are not rushing to the courts to cover themselves and use the money? In fact, if there was one thing that I was to say today in my visit here, is to state that environmental issues, and in fact air pollution, it is a political issue. This is the way we must look at it. Yesterday was World Environment Day. Yes, it fell on a day that I respect my Muslim brothers very, very much. But because of a political statement or a situation, NEMA people and others are told, don't go, this is a day that should be respected. Yes, I know my Muslim brothers, they respect the environment. It is a blessing that this day has fallen on the World Environment Day, and therefore it should enhance the message, because people are dying. It's not Muslim, it's not Christian, it's not everyone else, but because of some political reasons, someone says, don't go. No senior official was there. You were there yesterday. You find no senior official who is supposed to be there. The director of NEMA is supposed to read the message. He's not there.
They weren't there.
They were not there because of politics. Talk about back to Mao, what you are telling me just now.
Yes.
The issues in Mao are political. It's not anything to do with what is scientifically supposed to be there. Yet, Nairobi is the host of such a respectable global organization. We should be fitting to deal with some of these things.
Yes, Peter.
Isaac, you make a great point. Well, and thanks for all of the support. I should bring you everywhere as my cheerleader. So thanks for that. But you make an interesting point how the people in the rural villages maybe are not aware of the indoor air pollution issue, but also people that work in global health are also ignorant of the impact of it. Cooking, indoor cooking and indoor air pollution kills more people than malaria and HIV combined. Billions go into the research on how to stop or reduce that burden. But pennies go into the cook stove issue. So it's going to, some people estimate it's going to take a $50 billion investment to really address, the 3 billion people that cook with biomass, the 3 million people that are dying. So it's a big issue. It's funny, just before you came, I was going to say, when I was a kid, Wangari Maathai really inspired me to do this work, so I've been doing this for 30 years. And I always wonder, where is the next Wangari Maathai? Where is she?
Yes.
And I think Isaac, in some ways, is kind of, you are sort of the Wangari Maathai person. But I think that for young people who are watching this or looking at this, it's like, turn off your apps, get off your cell phone, and be the next Wangari Maathai to really help save the forests of Kenya and help transform save the world. Yeah. So I think it's really, there's an enormous amount of work to be done, and I appreciate all the work.
Yes, Peter,
I hope you don't mind me calling you Wangari Maathai. Well, I mean, you're a man.
She's greater than all of us put together.
Yes, she is.
And I believe that it's an effort. Everyone should be a Wangari Maathai.
Yeah.
Because that's what it should not be me or whoever
although
it is.
she was better looking in your eyes.
I can imagine,
True.
May her soul rest in
But there
peace.
needs to be a call. There should be a prize for the next one.
Peter, I just need to understand, because in cities we have things like gas, fairly green energy, sort of, if you think about it, which means then the rural setting should be the target for your products.
Correct, yeah.
How are you doing with that in terms of just getting people aware in rural settings and them being able to purchase some of this? And what are the costs, by the way?
Yeah, so both the stoves cost roughly 4,000 shillings, but we have a new subsidy program that will allow us to bring this wood stove to rural areas at a much cheaper price. So that will be launching in a few months. So it would be maybe a quarter of the cost. So that's very exciting. We're hoping to roll out millions of stoves to rural households across Kenya. Yeah, but no, of course, when you look at the 1.1 billion people on the continent right now, 800 million of them use biomass, 600 million of those are using firewood. So that's really where we want to get to, but the challenge is that those people, don't have the funds to buy that stove. So it'd be great to say, well, get them to use LPG. Of course, they don't have the resources for it. So just like how countries invest in clean water, clean air, clean food, they need to be investing in clean cooking to support that, because otherwise, 100 years from now, you might have people with solar lights on the roof and 3 stone fires in their house, and you can't see the light from the smoke. So it needs to be a real global action and a national Kenyan action.
Sean, I'm looking at the Sustainable Development Goals, and about 6 of them are actually aligned with this issue of air pollution and environmental conservation, good health and well-being, goal number 3. Goal number 7, affordable and clean energy. Kenya has been trying to achieve a bit of this, included even in our new generation notes the other day. Goal number 11, sustainable cities and communities. Goal number 12, sustainable consumption and production. Goal number 13, climate action and partnerships for goals. That is goal number 17, all right? So I assume you have to incorporate government and all manner of authorities responsible for these kinds of initiatives to be able to achieve your goal. As UNEP based in Kenya, of course, charity begins at home. Yeah. So how much are you involved with the Kenyan government, the Ministry of Environment, the National Environment Management Authority, organizations like his, to be able to just champion some of the changes that we want to see?
Thank you for that question. Actually, Kenya, these are my champions. Because Nairobi is in our backyard, you know, compared to where Gigiri is, yes. A lot of stuff that we try to innovate and test is done here. So with the county government, Nairobi County, also in Kiambu County, we've actually piloted where, with them, we've shut down portions of the streets. In 2016, the CBD near Jivanji Gardens put up these monitors to get a before pollution baseline, during the street closure baseline and change, and then reopen the street again and monitor. These have led to some quite interesting changes in terms of that relate to some of the SDGs in terms of the sustainable cities. Right now on Lutuli Avenue, the governor of Nairobi is repurposing that street to a one-way, adding in more pedestrian lanes and so on. And as an example, and we have these devices set up along the street, there's a matatu stop at one end and so on and so forth, to be able to really assess what these changes mean in terms of actual quantities of pollution. So we're being able to measure this and see this. We're hoping that this will inspire neighboring counties and the Nairobi County also to start to scale this across the street, the city. So we're talking about measurement, but what do you do with measurement, right? So with measurement, NEMA, who struggles to generate revenue, could have a mechanism to identify real-time hotspots, violators, and use their mobile pollution truck. They have a mobile lab to validate and find people that are violating. We can use the technology to manage congestion. Where there's congestion, there is pollution. We've got all fleets on these roads. Give priority to those lanes to get them out. There are other things they're looking at. For example, high occupancy vehicle lanes. If you look at the streets when there's congestion, in the cars, there's usually one person. You know, we need to look, and we're working with them on ideas along those lines, how to provide incentives for people to carpool. Priority lanes for those who do carpool, and so on and so forth. So
or they could borrow Isaac's electric car.
You can borrow mine too.
There we are.
And of course, you mentioned it, and thanks for doing so, Peter. We have, and we're working closely with the Kenyan government, you know, the 8-year rule on imports of cars. There's discussion to revise that to a 5-year rule and so on. Because the newer cars are cleaner. And indeed, Africa is a bit of a dumping ground for the old cars. Shift to electric mobility, shift to cleaner forms of mass transit. I think these things we will see benefits in terms of bringing down the pollution. So right now, and we've got some developments also with Safaricom, using their base stations to mount these devices and create a real-time monitoring infrastructure. Again, we can use this sort of information in a variety of ways, not just for fining, not just for congestion control, but actually inform citizens of what the levels are and what they can do about it.
Isaac, he brings in a very important point, which is, you know, cutting the age limit for cars that we import into the country to 5 years. And you are talking about politicization of some of these things. And this is one issue that has really been, you know, resisted among the, of course, the commercial people who actually do business in importing cars and all of that. But it has a very big role to play in terms of just cutting the emissions, because 8-year cars, you could say, really are not the best in terms of, you know, emissions. And 5-year cars perhaps would be able to cut on that. And I've been to cities like, say, Algiers, where they have put in place that 5-year rule. And as you travel across the city, you're able to see how much less emissions you see from cars and all the vehicles that then, you know, are in those cities, compared to Kenya, really, which is a really bad problem. So how do we address some of these things in terms of the understanding of these new initiatives of cutting emissions or reducing the age limit for cars vis-a-vis the commercial aspect of it by the Kenya Auto Bazaar Association?
Okay, let's first of all pick it up from the policy level.
Yes.
Kenya has got a policy on reduction of air pollution. And let's give it, there is goodwill in terms of understanding and willing to implement. Currently, starting from last year, what they have managed to do is to deal on the stack kind of emission, which is from mainly the industries. And NEMA is now working on what is the ambience. And then soon, they have not been able to implement the automobile age limit because, again, of political issues. And let me first of all explain. We have 7,000 cars that are imported into this country on a monthly basis.
7,000?
7,000 cars that come into this country. And we currently are better off in terms of the age limit than our regional compatriots,
yes,
if we may. Tanzania has about a 15-year age rule. Uganda is implementing a 10-year age, and they're going to reduce by 2 years every year. Rwanda and Burundi is ageless, whether left or right, it doesn't matter. And we have other countries like Zambia as well, who are dealing on 25, 50-year-old car you can import and bring it in. But what happens currently, when we have 8-year rule, and Tanzania is ageless or 15-year-old, there are people who, for some reason, they get away of getting cars from Tanzania because you can see the inspection of the car, you realize this is not a Kenyan car. It's just been imported, and for some reason it has numbers. And this is messing up, and I've written this on my columns severally on my website if you look at that. But the more serious issue is on the inspection of the automobiles. And the most painful thing, which I again remove and say it today, is that most of the cars that we have, about 60% of the cars on Kenyan roads have been removed the muffler, the catalytic inverter. It doesn't exist because it is being exported in a black market. And therefore, most of the cars now are not only emitting what an 8-year-old car is supposed to emit, but they are emitting complete killer gases, as it were. And it's a painful thing. How do we deal with this? First of all, the NEMA should be enabled. We need to have the goodwill. We need to train the communities. Everybody must understand why is this being done. It's for your own health. How much are we paying in terms of hospital bills? How much are we paying in terms of how many people are we losing? Because if we are losing 800 people globally, 13 every minute, it means that we are losing our own and we are killing our own. What can we do to quickly deal with this? Implement these laws. There needs to be rules that are going to control the entire process in terms of how much, what is the emission of a car. We currently do local inspection of vehicles for PSVs, but we don't do like what London has just started the emissions in a specific place, and I'm glad what we are doing in Kenya in different places so that we have greener areas in all this. So we need to implement this so that it is true that we are doing this. We should be able, if you have a green car, to its maximum level of, I'm glad I initiated the reduction of duty on smaller cars so that 1,000 cc and lower because of higher consumption, then you are able to reduce the duty. Yeah. Now I am pushing for, and I'm calling upon, and if there is any of your viewers who is listening and is able to influence, we need to have the green cars, meaning the electric cars, to be at 0 rate. So that people can be encouraged to do that, because the world is going to that direction. Unless we do it as early as possible, we are going to have a problem because all the dumping will be in this region. But above all, harmonization of the East Africa community law on emissions, on environmental matters, on pollution, so that because anything happening in one area is also happening, is affecting us in a different area. And therefore, that harmonization is very important at this level, that we need to bring these things together and be able, and people should benefit.
Yeah.
If we are doing something like Peter's cook stove, the benefits on carbon trading and all that should also reach the people, apart from just the reduction on cost. And I want to challenge my good friend Peter to not only do the metallic ones, but also to work on brick and mortar, kind of a thing that is going to affect the communities. We have not less than 10 million or maybe 15 million households that are using firewood on a daily basis. We are talking of cutting trees to the equivalent of 15 million trees now, 15.6 million trees per day, because every household is doing 10 kilograms of firewood. So coming from cars into all this, we need to get all this together.
Right.
But then we have the laws. Standards have been set by KEBS. Are we following up, or people are hiding in laws and all that?
All right.
Isaac, just to comment on that. So, you know, this stove reduces wood consumption by 70%. So not charcoal, but wood consumption. And so we could get that 15 million down to around 5 million. So that is the goal, is to roll that out to rural areas.
All right, gentlemen, let's take a short break. When we come back, we'll still be discussing this, including the international problem, because we are having big countries like the US withdrawing from the Paris Agreement, and what that means then to the rest of the world, because those countries are actually some of the major contributors to air pollution in the world. All right, we'll be back in a short while, and I have to mention the short burning that we had here still has an effect, you know, on the air that we're breathing right now, so I can imagine. What does it say?
It's saying it's fairly okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fairly okay means 25. Okay, acceptable.
Yeah, so,
29 now.
oh, well,
Keeps rising.
If you went higher up, maybe.
Let's take a short break. We'll be back with more.
actually,
Welcome back to NTV. Today, this morning, we are discussing the World Environment Day's theme of air pollution across the world and see what practicable solutions we can have as Kenyans to be able to cut on our emissions and live a bit more safely. I have three gentlemen in studio with me. Sean Khan is from the United Nations Environment Program, and Mr. Peter Scott is the CEO and founder of Ban Jikos. You can see some of those, and Isaac Kalua is a renowned Kenyan conservationist as well, to talk to us about some of these issues that we are talking about right now. So, gentlemen, I'm looking at a report here by the United Nations Environment Assembly. It's called Actions on Air Quality, all right? It focused on 10 basic measures to improve air quality, you know, around air indoor pollution, public transport, fuels and vehicles, waste banning and air quality laws and regulations. And one of the points that I see here is only a quarter of countries have advanced fuels and vehicle standards, which can significantly reduce small particulate matter pollution, especially in cities. Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Burundi and Rwanda decided that from 1st of January 2015, only low sulfur fuels would be allowed in their countries. If met by similar vehicle standards, this would reduce vehicle emissions by over 90%. Mr. Isaac, did this even work? Does it work in Kenya, or is this something we have on paper?
We have a big challenge of fuel standards. In fact, as you know, I'm also part of Honda family, and therefore there are cars that companies that are producing cars can never send to Kenya, like the engine, the diesel engines. Honda will never send any of their cars directly or new, and you will not buy a car that is new from the local place because of our challenge in oil quality. Being part of Kenya Association of Manufacturers, again, there is that challenge of raising the standards of quality and the engines that we are using, and then there is a challenge. There is the EU, implementing the EU standards of the oil is what is a challenge currently. There is a lot of adulteration of fuels that's coming in, and that affects the engine capacity, the air pollution increase on the same, and this is a challenge. So we are fighting towards that. But again, once standards have been set, we should not even start arguing on this, basing ourselves on job opportunities, matters of industrialization. Standards are standards, and we should be able to match the standards. This is mature technology elsewhere. We just need to import the same and implement, because we are hiding under political statements that delay this because Kenya is still far. Yet, we are the same ones who are paying the price for using what is substandard because it is affecting the quality of air. And the equipment are there that are showing that we are paying much more in terms of hospital bills, and we are losing lives. And the quality of our brain and neural systems are being affected. And therefore, we need, in my opinion, to get the politicians, as I said, environmental issues are political political issues. We need to drive it to the point that they need to understand and drive this for the good of the country.
All right. Sean, it also says the majority of countries around the world, including those in Africa, have now put in place national air quality standards. What are these, first of all, and has Kenya done that?
Kenya has, and Kenya's done a little bit more too. Kenya amongst some of the 4 countries in East Africa that have adopted a limit for lower sulfur fuels, right? 50 parts per billion, I think, is the level. It's basically setting targets in terms of what the maximum emission limits of this sort of criteria pollutant is meant to be, so that we can work, the country can work and reducing and meeting those targets. Not all countries have this. You know. An interesting point here, when we talk at the onset of this show about the 7 million deaths caused by air pollution, 94% of that burden is in this continent in Asia. So the burden of this, 1 out of some 8 people that die, is African and Asia. So it's quite a serious problem. The efforts in Kenya, I think, are quite progressive, not aggressive, but progressive. And I am hoping that other countries, we mentioned a few of them, will start to follow pursuit. I was in Senegal just recently, and they're hosting the Youth Olympic Games in 2022. And the president there is determined to reduce pollution around at least the city of Dakar by that time. They, like many other places you quoted, don't have limits on cars, don't have limits on standards on fuels. But they have some more infrastructure than Kenya. So we're trying to work with them to get these examples out there, just similar to the one I talked about earlier at Lutuli Avenue, and see if we can inspire others to replicate. We need to be able to demonstrate that. One of the issues we have at the boda bodas is not just here, it's everywhere. We need to look at cleaner forms of transport and shift away. You know, if you look, so there's the rural crisis and traditional ways of cooking and poverty and the lack of access to cleaner fuels. In the urban setting, it's different. It's just density, you know, all cars. So the pollution is a lot linked to industry. It's linked to how we produce electricity. It's linked to our transport fleets. So the solutions are a little bit different. And I think a big part of this is it starts, you know, well, two-prong approach is the bottom-up with awareness raising.
Yes.
And then, of course, the top-down with these sorts of limits and standards, frameworks across, for collaboration across regions.
Yes, just a follow-up on that. What are the standards for Kenya? Is it based on figures, and what are they, and where are we?
Oh, I couldn't tell you the figures right off the bat. But yes, the Clean Air Act defines the pollutants and then the levels of which it needs to be. For example, I think the standards here for PM, let me not quote because I'll probably get it wrong, but I think it's a little bit higher than the WHO guideline. Nevertheless, it is set. And in some countries, they revise these and lower them and, you know, and improve upon those limits.
All right. Peter, it also says here that more than 3 billion people still use solid fuels and inefficient cook stoves, but in Seychelles has been able to improve indoor air quality by transitioning the whole country from solid fuels in inefficient cook stoves to liquefied petroleum gas. I mean, there are certain countries that are actually doing this. And you're talking about having sold 600,000, a good number if you think about it, and on the rise. But Kenya, against a population of about 50 million people, can you imagine? Of course, a lot more of them use, you know, gas as, you know, a source of energy in homes. But still, there's a big difference, and especially in rural settings.
Correct, yeah. I mean, right now on the continent, about 5% people use LPG. By 2030, that number will go to 10% of the continent, but you'll still have the remaining 90% almost exclusively using biomass. So yeah, I think if people have access to LPG, if they're able to afford the upfront cost for the cylinder and everything, that's great. They should use it. But there are many people that don't have access to it, so that they can use wood or charcoal as an option. You know, it's also, you know, I think in urban Africa, people spend much more on cooking than they do, say, in the West. So someone who's using makaa is maybe spending 30,000 shillings a year on charcoal. So with our stoves, we're able to cut that by 60%. So to get that down to, you know, 13 or 14,000, so they can save 16,000 shillings a year. So it's a real issue around poverty. But yeah, no, I mean, again, as we talked about earlier, our goal is to bring a variety of different cook stoves, electric and hybrid and other things. And those things are, you know, those things are coming when we'll be on the way. But LPG is just not going to be the silver bullet. I think Kenya is a little bit different, where there is a higher uptake, somewhat higher uptake of LPG. We also have some of the highest cost or most expensive LPG in the world in Kenya, so people don't often realize that as well. So yeah, no, we're definitely in support of it. It's just that it's not going to be the solution for everyone.
I can imagine you have a lot of resistance, especially when it comes to the poor households. People think perhaps you're just doing this to make money. They don't really understand the impact of what you're trying to do, really.
Well, I think that, I think people get the idea. You know, I've been doing this for 30 years, and the whole mission is to save forests. So the first 10 years of my career, I tried to get people not to use makaa at all, and then I realized, well, that wasn't working. I didn't make much of a dent. So I spent the last 10 years trying to get people to use makaa as efficiently as possible. The next 10 years will be trying to get people to use alternative sources. So we actually have a great new stove that we're designing in partnership with Bill Gates. So Bill Gates finally is interested in cook stoves. So we have this very interesting new stove that allows us to burn agricultural waste briquettes, like from bagasse, as cleanly as LPG. So that stove will be coming out next year as well. And so that will really be a great transition because it's going to create jobs, utilize a sustainable fuel that's grown and made in Kenya, and then allows people to have this great cooking experience. So and all of that's happening in Kenya. So Kenya really is a hub for innovation for us. All of our R&D takes place here. So I think we've had a lot of support from the Kenyan gov to make that happen.
Isaac, this is an international problem. Think about it. I mean, you have the most developed nations, really, their emissions are higher, and there's been this agreement, you know, on how we can cut down on this, and we had the Paris Agreement, which now the largest economy in the world is pulling out of, you know, the president there does not even believe climate change exists. When you have that kind of resistance from such big countries, does it slow down the process of just trying to conserve the environment, do you think?
It does slow, and the most painful thing is the lack of connectivity to the issue of air pollution and the SDG per se to the local economic growth. The moment governments do understand and appreciate that air pollution equals to very poor agricultural produce in the country, because this is a driver of our economy, the sooner they will appreciate this. Look, there are global leaders, top presidents, who have trashed in the open globally issues of environmental processes and laws and pacts that have been agreed upon. You go to France and a president wakes up and says that this is all nothing, it should not be implemented. Everybody agrees, and you know there is the agreed polluter pays principle, which is very clear that it has to be adhered to. But policies are policies. International guidelines and all these are there. But the implementation, appreciation of this to be localized, the political goodwill, that is why I will repeat it umpteenth times. Unless we get the political clout to understand and appreciate, going back to just what I talked about earlier on, having our cars inspected, just like in most countries in the world. Every 2 years, a car would be inspected, checked on emissions and everything else. And when Kenya wanted to start that, it got stuck in our parliament. And I sometimes don't blame the parliamentarians. I think we also need to help them to understand, because they don't know the impact, the immense challenge that we have in the country at their individual position. And therefore, when they get together, sense is not there. Maybe money is exchanging hands. Unfortunately, in few cases, I would never want to imagine that my MP is involved in all this kind of a thing. But we're talking of that general.
Yes.
So that political goodwill, I believe, is what we need. It is lacking. Talk about Kyoto Protocol. Talk about all these other protocols that have been in place. Good looking, seated in the institutions that are there. Awareness. Institutions like NEMA should have all the money with what my good brother and colleague is talking about, how they can raise funds. But they do not have. They are not a priority in the budgeting system per se, or either they do not present it in the way they are supposed to do, or when they have an opportunity to do so and to appear in a meeting like World Environment Day, they are told, sit home, don't appear in this meeting because it is fallen in a bad day. These are the small things that we need to adjust so that we now follow the global institutions. We have UNEP here and UNEA, and we are able to be guided in the best way possible on protocols that are international, that we are bound to as a nation.
All right. Let's go to Martin Mwaura, our reporter in Murang'a County, to tell us what's happening in Murang'a this morning. Martin, good morning. How is Murang'a?
Okay. Good morning, Edmond. As you have rightly said, yes, we are coming live. We just want to delve on matter to do with the environment as the ongoing topic that you're currently tackling at the office. Now, I'll just want to engage with the county conservator, that is Murang'a County Conservator, Mr. Dennis Kirongo, just to tell me how far are we in terms of environment? Are we doing badly? And maybe what is their target cover? What is the forest cover in Murang'a, and what needs to be done to achieve the forest cover that is actually required? Because currently I'm hearing we are doing dismally. But without much further ado, let me just bring him on set, and so that we can engage further about the matters to do environment. I kindly start by introducing yourself and tell us how are we here in Murang'a in terms of environment and forest cover.
Thank you very much. My name is Dennis Kerengo. I work as an ecosystem conservator in Murang'a County under Kenya Forest Service. In Murang'a, we are doing very well. Our tree cover is 14.5%, and by the year 2022, our target is 17.5%. So currently, we have embarked on tree planting in collaboration with various stakeholders, the county government of Murang'a, the water service boards, NEMA, with our stakeholders on the ground. We are working with community forest associations and also RUAs who are under WARMA. So currently we've established over 150 hectares under indigenous forests, and more or less like 300 hectares under private farms and individuals. We also collaborate with the public institutions like schools. We have a program under school greening program, and we are working with the Apatana projects, and we have done a lot. We also work with the county government in promotion of establishment of fruit trees like avocados, mangoes, and macadamia. And we are progressing well. We are seeing that the future forest is in private farms, individuals, and also public institutions. With the clarion of the president calling for establishment of 10% tree cover, it is in the community and individual farms. So we are encouraging the community to establish more trees, especially indigenous, and also the fruit trees, so that we have we're going to get we're going to kill two birds using one stone. Like for the avocados and mangoes, the community will reap benefit from. The immediate benefit is fruits, and the long-term benefit is increasing the tree cover in the county.
Now, maybe being that you're the person in charge of forests in the county, how are we performing in terms of logging in our forests? There was a decree by the CS in charge of forests, Mr. Tobiko, and how are you enforcing? And maybe is it a challenge?
Well, it's no longer a challenge because we are working closely with other partners, with our forest rangers who are basically enforcing the law. Within the gazetted forest, there is zero exploitation. There is zero cutting of trees. Also, we are also partnering with Rhino Act. We have within the abadeas, we have electric fence, and we have gates which are manned. We are doing that jointly with the community forest associations, our rangers, and the KWS. Where we're having logging now is within the private farms. Our community here in Murang'a have actually planted a lot of exotic trees. So currently, that's where the country is getting its demand for timber, be it timber, be it poles and fencing posts. We are getting from private farms. Yes.
Most of the people always wait for national tree planting events or even counties. Maybe what is your call to people who have spaces?
Well, I think we have moved from tree planting to tree growing. We are no longer saying let's plant trees. We are just saying let's grow trees, so that it's something which is embedded in our lifestyle. The communities, like for example here in Murang'a, people are planting trees, and they are not only waiting for the rains or waiting for promotion of tree planting. So it is a tree growing season. Like here in Murang'a, we have been very lucky. We have received the rains which are above near normal. So our people have been planting from the start, maybe early April. That's when we started receiving our rains, and we have been planting all that. And I think this is now the climax. Like yesterday, we celebrated the World Environment Day, and one of the activities which we have been encouraging is tree planting. So we use those occasions as a platform to tell the people that let's plant trees. But in actual sense, the process of planting trees is ongoing. But we use those avenues to tell the people and popularize, so that it's a forum where we are able to reach the people. Yes.
I hear there are plans, you are working with the county government to start planting fruit trees along the streets of Murang'a. Maybe you can tell us about that.
Well, in Murang'a, we are working closely with the county government. We are encouraging green spaces. Green spaces, like even in the background where we have a tree nursery. Those are pockets of green spaces which are actually meant to take up the carbon dioxide which is being produced within town. We are encouraging that because there is high population, so and high waste in town. This huge release of carbon dioxide, and the trees are going to absorb the carbon dioxide. So we are working closely, and we are also encouraging the town planners to plan in such a way that there are spaces for tree growing. Yes, and also arboretums. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Edmond, as you have just heard, you are talking to the ecosystem conservator here in Murang'a, and he's saying that people have really taken up tree growing in good number. They are just not waiting for the rain season. They are doing it out through the whole season. Now, this is an encouragement that by 2022 we'll have maybe made our forest cover from 14.5 to 17. Back to you, Edmond.
Thank you so much, Maura, there from Murang'a County, speaking to one of the people championing environmental conservation by planting of trees. And he mentioned something there, gentlemen. Tree planting and tree growing. What's the difference in your understanding?
There's a very big difference. Maybe my colleague will
No, please go.
There's a very big difference. Tree planting, most of what we have been doing as a nation is tree planting, unfortunately. You have seen people from the armed forces with my mentor, Professor Wangari Maathai, going to places, planting trees in their many numbers. They leave their place. The trees are eaten up by animals. They are never there. Go to places that our very serious KDF officers have been. Be to places that you and everybody, when I say KDF, I mean everybody, that we have gone there, but we never made, with just excitement of a moment, we plant a tree,
take pictures with it?
Take pictures, leave the place. There is no plan for protecting. There is no plan for making sure that the tree grows. And this is what brought out the initiative that I started when my mentor Wangari Maathai passed on. I requested for Kenyans to plant just simple 71 trees in commemoration of Wangari Maathai. My imagination was that we were going to do 5.6 million trees in 1 year, which is what we deplete in 1 day. Previously, when our population was 30 million. Within that period, Kenyans had planted and actually grown, conserved the 71 trees times 15.9 million trees within 1 year. I had thought that they would do 5.6, sorry, and they had done about 15.9. Why? Because there's 71 trees, planting this for Wangari Maathai. It then grew to a different level. I've planted for Wangari. I want to plant my own. Then we started as Green Africa Foundation. We said, plant your age. And it was started by President Kibaki when he planted 80 trees in Kitui to commemorate his birthday. Now Kenyans are starting to grow trees. So you are doing it with awareness. I want to grow a fruit tree. That is why you can hear we are talking about avocado. I want to grow a tree for medicinal value, because you understand, not just growing all of a sudden you're going to plant and then you leave, there is no tree that is growing. So it is about protecting, ensuring that it grows, and even further on.
Right.
So that is the difference between the growing and the planting.
Okay.
The planting is just specific day, growing is the process.
I've done a bit of that as well. I went to the Mau Forest.
I know, everyone has done that in
came
Kenya.
back to Nairobi.
Everyone has done that mistake.
Just to tell our viewers that we have actually opened our phone lines as well. If you need to contribute, to ask a question or to make a comment to our discussion this morning, you are welcome to do so. Our phone lines are open right now. You'll see those numbers on your screen, and you can call us and then talk to us about what you think about our discussion this morning. They are there. You can see them there. Just call in. We'll talk to you as well. Ask your question, comment, or contribution that you'd like to make this morning. Sean, this issue of tree planting and tree growing is really a major concern for most African countries and the world at large, if you think about it. Kenya, of course, has been talking about trying to achieve 10% forest cover. As a United Nations Environment Program, from where you sit, is this process really achievable, going by what we see in Kenya in terms of the financial, boost that we give that sort of sector, in terms of the institutions that we have, in terms of just goodwill in general, do you think?
Well, Edmond, I'm an optimist. So my default answer is yes, it is achievable. But it is, as Isaac explained, there are a number of drivers behind this. And I think a lot of this is governed by political will. A good portion of this is also governed by general awareness of what green cover means to us in terms of its global carbon sink benefit and so on. I think it is achievable. I think we talked earlier about pollutant nations versus non-pollutant nations. I think if we keep this local, we will start to see and be able to scale and replicate and inspire others to follow suit. I firmly believe this, and I'm seeing this start to happen, and that's a big part of our strategy. Keep it local, replicate, inspire, and it does happen. And I think a key thread throughout all that is getting the 1NG on board, having them understand what this does. Yes, tree planting and tree growing, and events I've fall victim to that too. I didn't go back to water my tree. But I think as we get people involved, maybe others can, just to use that as an example, if they were to understand it wasn't just an exclusive event with photographs and media, that the citizens actually came on board for these events, we could sort of see things at that minute scale grow.
All right, we have a Michael from Nakuru calling in this morning. Michael, welcome to the show. What is your question or comment?
I'm here. Hello?
Yes, Michael, we can hear you. What is your question or comment?
My one concern is about planting trees and making this country more greener.
Yes.
I've been working on it for several years. And I've actually planted, nearly last year, I planted all over like 10,000 trees.
Wow, massive.
And I've been doing this with my young boys, of which I coach football.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, yes, yes. I can hear you.
And again, I have another issue about the plastic bans.
Yes.
And the plastic papers and the use of the plastic issues. Several, we've been collecting them over, but then we don't have the disposal because we cannot ban because of the environment.
Yes. Okay. Thank you so much, Michael. He raises a very important point. Kenya now has banned
the last issue is about the wildlife animals.
Yes.
You know, we are fighting for the big five. And my big concern is,
yes,
if like you people can connect this nation with the United Nations and we come with a policy whereby we can ban the animal products, you know, where the markets are, right?
Yes.
Because of the trophies and the rest.
All right.
I think that is the much I can support your program for right now, because that is what I'm working on.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Michael. I wonder, did you plant the trees or did you grow them, all 10,000 of them? We've lost Michael. It would have been interesting to know if he did. But he's played his part, gentlemen. 10,000 trees, he's talking about. The other issue he raises is plastics, which Kenya has done quite well in terms of just trying to ban. And yesterday, the president, of course, saying banning use of single plastics in national parks, all conserved areas, beaches, and all of that, as an effort really to reduce that. But he says once we ban that and we've collected the much that we've had, or at least we've disposed of, where do we take it? We do not have, say, industries where we can mint it into something else.
I see business opportunity here.
Yeah.
He may not be aware, but already there are people that are exporting this plastic to places like India, where they process this and make different kinds of goods, carpets, nylon string, and so on. So Yeah, we don't want to burn it. That would be horrible. But there are business opportunities with all of these problems, and some of that is starting. There are entrepreneurs here in Kenya right now, developing business models to process plastics. Other example is turning it back into liquid. Help me with the term. It's liquid.
Like syngas.
Syngas. And that's starting to happen. These are not small investments. They're well over $1 million to set up such plants. But these things are starting to happen now as a result of this banning.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I guess the best case scenario is where the plastic isn't produced even in the first place. So you look at, say, in New Zealand now, they don't have single-use water bottles. It's all done in just like an aluminum can, which is very easy to recycle, has a high value. So in our factory, we used to have like a zero plastic policy. So we did an audit. We don't use.
Which country?
Sorry?
Which country? You said?
No, sorry, in our company.
Oh, in your company.
In our company, so it's like, let's not make that plastic. So before we used to use plastic wrap around the box, thing like this, we just got rid of that. So I think it really starts until, Kenya is able to implement standards and really build the structure that's needed. Consumers and manufacturers need to start taking responsibility for it and not producing plastic. The ocean is filled with plastic, and the amount that's actually going to be recycled or reprocessed is still a tiny fraction. Most of it's going to go in the Nairobi River and then make its way out to the Indian Ocean. So, anyway, sorry, that's my...
A lot to do, okay.
Yeah.
We have Luther from Eldoret also calling us this morning. Luther, what's your question or comment?
My comment, I just want to follow up from what the UNEP specialist was talking about, the ban on importation of these 80-year-old vehicles, which was a good move, and I think Dr. Kalua followed up on it. However, most of these emissions from motor vehicles are from urban mobility vehicles, especially our matatus. For instance, if we take a route like Eastleigh, the vehicles are over 20 years old, some are even 30, 40 years old, and they're still on the road, and the emission scores are not done. Are there partnerships that exist, probably with NTSA, when they go to do the checks or the inspections? Can they partner for inspection on the emission scores? Of course, a lot of work is being done on household emissions, what GCOCOA is doing and everything, just to reduce that. But our nationally determined contributions, which we submit to the UN, we will be able to score better, not just on planting trees, but also now looking at our urban carbon emissions, which are significant contributions. And it's one of the fastest growing carbon emissions in our economy, set aside from deforestation and industrial emissions, which have been our traditional sources of emissions.
Okay.
But urban vehicular emissions are growing. What partnerships would there be?
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Luther from Eldoret. We also have Vincent from Nairobi, I believe, also calling in this morning. Morning.
Okay. My name is Vincent.
Yes.
Yeah. I just want to Hello.
Yes. I can hear you, Vincent.
My name is Vincent.
Yes.
I just want to congratulate Dr. Kalua for the good work he's doing.
Yes.
And he's doing a very good work because they have really helped the border members, and we are seeing that when they are doing their services, they know how to dispose those plastic things. But when for the disposing the plastic after doing the service, he really helped them. So
I think we're losing Vincent there. Okay, all right. Thank you so much, Vincent, for calling in. Congratulating Dr. Kalua for the good work that you're doing. We were talking about emissions by cars and cutting the age limit to 5 from 8, and Luther from Eldoret is concerned about not so much about the cars that we bring in, but the ones that we already have here. And a case in point that he talked about is the Eastleigh route. You and I know the cars and the vehicles that ply that route and what they look like and how much carbon dioxide they emit into the ecosystem. So what initiatives are there to try to make sure that the ones that have outlived their usefulness are then taken out and then new ones brought in?
I think, one, we have talked about it earlier on. I raised it that we need to have that biannual inspection of motor vehicles.
Yes.
It was slowed down by Parliament when NTSA raised it. I believe that sense or something good is happening because we may be heading that direction. But the overall solution of such, look at the SGR. You know, we may make a lot of noise, we may talk about corruption, but we need also to look at the bigger picture of all this. The number of people who are traveling on SGR today have moved from the buses that were being used to transport. We now should be talking to about the next level of electrifying SGR so that we are now totally on zero emission, then we are efficient. Similarly, the minibuses that are being used, it will be a priority, and I want to imagine, because I've seen discussions on media with the different heads of state, including that of French, where they are talking about monorails and mass transport systems. I think this is what is going to really eliminate that kind of pollution at that level. And therefore, Luther is on spot talking about this, and NTSA is the institution, and I need to challenge them to really move in that direction in a very strong way, and challenge the committee in Parliament on transport to ensure that they work together with the Environment Committee to deal with this challenge. I think this is something that's very important, and I can't thank him even anymore, because I believe it is what we just must do. And thank you for the kind words from Vincent. If there's something that we are almost leaving out of Michael and his son Kubo, planting 10,000 seedlings and trees to that level. Allow me to do something that I have never done, and it has never been done any time before in this country. I want to correct something that has been reported wrongly since time immemorial. There is no time in our country that forest cover was at 1.6%. Never. And I'll tell you why. Our forests, what is called gazetted forests, is only 2% of the total land mass of our country. So there is no way you'll tell me that all those were swept out and the entire country trees were not in that space. The entire Kenya wildlife space, what is called KWS and gazetted as conservation space, entirely is 8%. But you will hear a situation that people say, before independence, we had 10% forest cover. Then we messed up, it came to 1.6. Then now it came, I am the one who released when I was chair of Kenya Water Towers, I released the county by county forest cover, working with the remote sensing team that is in the country, and we talked about 7.1%, and then immediately that was disputed by KFS, and they released another figure of 7.2% because our figures removed the mangrove forest, and therefore there was a 0.1 that was remaining. You can now see in every message of the president that is seen to be keen, there is a message that is being pushed for him to read, that we must raise our forest cover to 10% by 2030. If it was actually where we were and going the way we were, I can tell Mr. President for free we were not going to be able to do that. But the fact is this: the system of checking the environmental forest cover is not known, is not clarified. Even with the remote sensing team, because it has to be combined with the ground truthing. So easily today, seated here, I can tell you, without even going deep, and I'm not doubting any scientific process, we already have more than 10% forest cover. The question that remains, why was it 1.6? And why is it that there is always budget and money being put in, and people like Mike and his son Kubo are planting 10%? When and who is going to tell us the real truth? This is what I'm saying, and I always say it's a corruption issue, because in environment is where all is hidden and people may never notice. And I am proud to say this on your set, that we didn't have 1.6 forest cover at any given time. Even the team from remote sensing, they are still struggling and waiting for approval on how to do the right way of dealing with the forest cover, so that they can give Kenyans the correct figure.
Okay.
This is
So
a
currently,
true
what is the
position.
percentage?
What has been reported, at least from a report that I initiated from an institution that I was at, scientifically proven, but lacking the ground truthing, which is very important in the aspect, is 7.1. Okay. I believe there may be another institution that set it at a different. But actually, after the ground truthing, I believe that we already have more than 10% forest cover. This is a fact. Yes. But let's take it a notch higher. And I'm glad that my brother has talked about this. Environmental conservation. Tell an African person, an African adult, to conserve environment, you'll be left alone. But show them how to make money. They will go in that route.
Yes.
It's therefore very simple for us to concentrate on dealing with Michael, who has planted 10,000 trees. I have worked with people, I've mentored people that we are working with, and they have grown trees to protect their mortgage that they have taken from a bank or something like this, and show them how you can make money out of this. I am glad that now from China we have an export opportunity for fruits, of avocado. Let's encourage people. Let's show them how to do them at their best. Let them have the advantage of all these things before we do anything. So that you plant a tree with a reason. And then now we leave the Kenya Forest Service to do their job. Okay. Unfortunately, once again, you remember we had a task force on logging and forestry in this country.
Yes.
Did a very good report, but where is it now?
Gathering dust somewhere.
Where is it? And unfortunately also parts of it, when it was supposed, after everybody signed it off, parts of it were doctored when it was being released. This is the country that we are in. But I have so much hope because I know I will make change in the space that I am in, just like he is and everybody is, so that we can get a great nation for all of us.
All right. Peter, on this issue of tree planting, of course, and tree growing now as is the new term that we are using, and your technology still uses charcoal and trees. Do you have a CSR activity where you encourage people to plant more so that in as much as you still consume that in your products, to be able to maintain the balance?
Yeah, no, I mean, of course, our whole team just went out and did a CSR activity where we went and planted some trees in Ngong Forest, which is great. We just did that last week, so I'm going to go back next week and water them.
Are you growing them?
Because we don't want to just plant a bunch of goat snacks or whatever those things are going to be. But because I really come from the conservation point of view, I worked in conservation, and the issue kept being that, well, people want to come into the forests and take trees because they don't have an option. So that's why then I switched to say, let's give away to people to use less wood. So it definitely needs to happen on both sides. We need to be planting more trees, growing more trees, preserving that forest, getting forest cover from 7 to 10 to 20%. I mean, right now there's going to be a huge that Kenya won't be able to supply its own needs for wood for the building industry, let alone for cooking. And we're going to start importing trees from, I don't know, Indonesia or somewhere else. So it is, there needs to be a huge work on both sides, both on the supply side and on the demand side. Right. Us doing it one day of CSR is nice, everyone feels good, and it's nice, for the it's nice to plant a tree, but it's really going to take systemic change on both sides of it.
All right.
And on that note, we should be gearing towards not 10% as a country. There are countries who are doing 60% of forest cover. Why don't we set the standard by creating an entire powerful industry, an economy out of the wood industry, and target 40% as a country?
Like
why are we keeping the
Gabon
story
is 40%
where it is not? 10% that is not, 1% that was never there. We should be targeting a higher standard so that Michael and his son, Kubo, and others would be able to harness the value of the efforts that they are doing as a nation.
Sean, much of what we've talked about is caused by, a rapidly growing population. 7-point-something billion people all over the world. Kenya population heading towards 50 million. And with a growing population, then you need more space for settlement, meaning you cut down trees. With a growing population, you need more energy. You consume more energy in terms of lighting, in terms of cooking, in terms of everything else. Means you'd have to use extra measures and means to be able to create that energy. With a growing population, cities are going to be filled, more vehicles emitting even more carbon dioxide into the air that we breathe. How do you tackle the issue of an increasing population vis-a-vis the efforts towards conservation?
we want to develop, right? No one is saying don't develop. We want to develop, but we want to develop sustainably. So that is not an environment problem per se. It's a planning problem. It's an energy problem. So it needs an integrated approach. And a big part of this is the urban planning. You just said something which I take you to task on, that we're growing, so we need more space. Yes, we do, but we can also look at smarter urban design, smarter transport. You know, someone called in just now and talked about the matatu. What is the alternative, actually? If the government was to say, all matatus off the road.
We are talking about BRTs.
How are you, yeah, well, where is it, right? So how are we going to get from A to B? We need the alternatives. And what, like Peter's example, serves a good stopgap measure. What is an intermediate step to mitigate that while we get the more longer-term plan? And that's what we're saying. Let's look at short-term wins and while we develop these longer-term strategies. So we want to develop, but we need to look at ways to develop them sustainably. And that's a lot of the work that the UN Environment does, but also with other partners like Habitat, UN Habitat and others, is what are the best ways to develop in a sustainable manner. Right. And you're right, urbanization is happening at alarming rates in this continent. So it's just going to continue to compound itself. And I think a key part of it is alternatives, building that business case. We talked about economics, you know. Why would it be cheaper? How is it cost effective for a matatu industry to go to green matatus or install filters on their, reinstall the filters on the exhaust systems? What can we do to build that case so it becomes economically feasible for them to do that? And I think we're going to start to see those changes. Energy, we see improvements in energy. We're now, it's pretty hard to find an incandescent bulb. I know this because I have an incubated home and I use that to heat. So it's pretty hard to find that now in the supermarkets. It's pretty much transition onto LEDs. So we're seeing more and more efficiency come in, and certainly in the transport sector, the efficiency is improving and improving. Now we have to work closely with the policymakers to make that happen on the ground, to start transitioning the fleets to cleaner.
And as you mentioned earlier, in between the breaks, you're also playing your part. Dr. Kalua did mention that he has some special breed of a car. And could you tell us something about that?
No, I talked about the need to get the electric cars to be duty free, so that we can have more people encouraged to do this in the UK, in other countries, Europe, European countries. You'll find even when you come with it in the city, then you do not have you don't pay for parking. It's free of charge. And therefore this is the kind of a move we need to do. That I need to upgrade my small car to a more efficient. They had to make his car to be 100 cc. Mine is slightly more cc.
100 cc.
Just because, but that is just there is no feature in the customs regime to import an electric car. And I'm now, you know, this is the process that I want to suggest that we can move so that we can make it better for all of us.
All right.
You know,
I want to upgrade mine in the same way.
Just to clarify, I also have an electric car, right? It's 20 years old. And when we brought it in, there was there's nothing in the database for it. So on the logbook it says it's 100 cc's, so that it could be processed. So we need these sorts of legislation to allow and incentives to go along with that to promote consumers to taking it. The other thing is also to break down the barrier. One of the first questions someone asked me is, oh, but can you drive to Mombasa with it? No, but I can do 99% of my daily commute with it. Who repairs it? Well, it never breaks down. And I'm not joking. Okay, now mine is started. It's 20 years old. I have to replace some batteries. But it's much more efficient. It lacks a lot of things that a car has. It has no oil. It has no air filter, no exhaust, no alternator. I mean, there's so many things. It's just like his. Because it's not a combustion engine. So all the things that go along with it are absent. What does that mean for a consumer? Less maintenance cost. You know, so these are some of the things we need to do to really have the market pick this up.
All right.
You know,
Peter, closing remarks?
I think Kenya is an amazing country, and Nairobi is an amazing city. And I think that Nairobi is really poised to be one of the great innovation centers on the planet. But one of the big barriers to that is the traffic, the air pollution, the exhaust. People, that's the one sort of missing piece. If that could be reorganized, I think you would see a real explosion of innovation and development in the country. So we're excited to see that happen.
30 seconds.
There was an admission by Professor Gitari the other day, last year, I think, when we had a conference, that scientists in this country are not contributing so much to the global air pollution and environmental matters in this space that they should be doing. I want to encourage and challenge our scientists to be as innovative as possible, and that innovation, most of it is closed in boxes somewhere. Bring it out. And there is that intimidation even at government level that you cannot speak, it has to be the PS, it has to. So many people are getting silent with a lot of information. There is a way. Come and look for Kalua and tell him, I will bring it out. Look out for other institutions that you can, because it is for the future of our nation. We must do what is good for the good. How many people can be able to upgrade or import a car that is electric? We need to make it possible for all of us to live in a country that is green.
Just 30 seconds.
Edmond, I know Professor Gitari, and he's a good man. I came here to talk about air pollution and air pollution management. And these gadgets I brought here today was really to show you some examples of lower cost technologies that we are advocating for countries to adopt and complement regulatory monitoring systems that they may or may not have. We believe in order to drive that policy decisions, the sort of things we're talking about at a political level, we need the evidence. And so what I encourage to see Kenya in particular champion, and Uganda in the city of Kampala, Senegal and others are really champion in this, is to build these monitoring networks nationwide. And I think with that we'll start to see the kind of trends and patterns, and we'll have strong evidence, both driven by consumers, the public, the mass public, and to support the policy decisions to take some of the things we need. Our governor, the governor of Nairobi, recently stopped public vehicles coming into the city, caused havoc. But with the sort of evidence, you will have strong decision to back up some of these, strong evidence to back up some of these decisions.
All right. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Mr. Peter Scott is the CEO and founder of Ban Jikos, Jiko Core, that you see beautifully placed beside him. And Dr. Isaac Kalua is the CEO of Green Africa Foundation.
The chair.
And also the chair. And the founding chair of the Kenya Water Towers Agency as well. And Mr. Sean Khan is the program manager of a Global Environmental Monitoring System, or GEMS, at the United Nations Environment. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming. Just a last look at this. We have 21 and 640 CO2. We are safe, right?
We're safe. You're gonna get through the day.
At least in this room.
All right. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming this morning to talk to us about
Thanks
this.
for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you very
All
much.
right. If in case you need a bit more information on this, you can go to www.worldenvironmentday.global/frequently asked questions. There have answers to questions around what causes air pollution, the dangers of air pollution to health, the risk from increased air pollution, and how air pollution impacts climate. Thank you so much for your time, and those of you who called in to ask questions and contribute to our discussion this morning, thank you so much. We hope you have learned a lot and that you can now play your part in just trying to conserve the environment. Thank you so much. My name is Edmond Nyabola. Coming up after this is NTV Sasa. Don't go too far. Bye-bye.